What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Just sit back and think for a minute. What have you done with your life over the last 23 years? Think about what it would be like if you were 17 years old and the police knocked on your door. They put your hands behind your back and they began to read you your Miranda warnings, telling you that you had the right to be silent, that anything you say or do will be held against you in a court of law. You're 17 years old, the metal bracelets clamp across your wrist. They bite down. You're escorted to a car, the cold air hitting you in the face. And this could be it. This could be the last time that you ever see your parents' house. This could be the last time that you ever walk down a street sidewalk. Could you imagine what it's like to be in prison for the rest of your life for a crime that you know you didn't commit? What is it like when they first handcuff you? Are you thinking, I'm good. I have nothing to worry about. I know I didn't do this. Are you thinking, man, justice will prevail? They'll figure this out. They'll know it's not me. I know it's not me. And eventually they'll know. Could you just imagine that for one moment? You think that these things don't happen? And you know, some people might get mad and some people get upset, but sometimes prosecutors do nasty, nasty things. Sometimes law enforcement, they're so focused on one thing with their mind that they don't look at the other options. They don't look at the other avenues. They're focused on you. And when they're all focused on you, what can you do? Let's get into the story of a young man that spent 23 years of his life in prison for something that he didn't do. Her strangled body was discovered in a city forest. 3 weeks later, Adnan Syed, who was only 17 at the time of her death, was charged with her killing. Hae Min Lee, she lay lifeless, surrounded by trees and curtilage. Her last breaths, her last thoughts, frozen forever. Somebody had taken her life. Somebody had choken the air out of her lungs. She was born in South Korea in 1980. Her parents, looking for a better life, immigrated to Baltimore in 1992. Little did they know that on January 13, 1999, she would never arrive to pick up her younger cousin from daycare at 3:15 p.m. The cold wind blew through Baltimore. Cold, so very cold, in so many ways. Drug dealers, drugs, and drug addicts were becoming the norm in a city struggling with poverty. Crime was on the rise, and this young lady's body would lay partially buried in the chill in Leaking Park, alone, all by herself. On February 9th, a passerby would find her. He would find her lifeless body. With an investigation in full swing, an anonymous caller would help seal the fate of her ex-boyfriend. The caller suggested that investigators should focus their attention on Adnan Syed, her ex-boyfriend. A friend, or what some might say was never a real friend, Jay Wilds, would also report to police. He would tell them that Adnan expressed intentions of killing Lee and stated that he himself had helped Syed bury Lee's body after Syed confessed to killing her on January 13th. February 28th, 1999 would be his last day as a free man, possibly for the remainder of his life. This would be the last time that he would walk down the steps of his parents' home. This would be the last time that he would walk on a sidewalk in the free world. But did he really confess to killing Lee? Or was Jay Wilds simply lying? Was Jay Wilds involved in helping bury Lee? Or was he lying? Adnan Syed sat in a prison cell, inside a jail cell, charged with first-degree murder, robbery, kidnapping, false imprisonment. In 2000, a jury of his so-called peers would convict him at a second trial. The first one had ended in a mistrial, when the jury overheard the judge accusing the attorney, the defense attorney, of lying. At sentencing, the judge would hand down the harshest of harsh sentences. You, Mr. Syed, will spend the rest of your days in prison. Today, sir, we will bury you alive. We will send you behind the razor wire for eternity. With his head hung down low, he walked into the Maryland Department of Corrections. His new home, according to the judge. Dreams broken, broken dreams. Hopes and desires all forgotten. Life as he knew it, forever gone. Life in prison plus 30 years at the age of 17 for a crime he knew he had not committed. The family of Hae Min Lee, brokenhearted, but believing that they received some kind of justice when their daughter's alleged killer was sentenced to take his last breath, surrounded by concrete and steel. From the beginning of time, Syed had professed his innocence. He told everybody he could, I'm not guilty, you got the wrong guy. But the prosecutors would not listen. Instead, They would point fingers at him and accuse him of the viciousness that was unleashed on Lee. More than a decade after Syed was sent to prison, after more than a decade of sitting in a prison cell, after more than a decade of eating trash-ass food, Rabia Chaudhry, a Baltimore-based lawyer and family friend of the Syeds, emailed a journalist named Sarah Koenig and asked her to reinvestigate Lee's murder. They pleaded that Syed was innocent. They pleaded that he was going to die in prison for a crime that he had not committed. And Sarah Koenig, she would take on the case. That email helped launch the first season of a podcast called Serial. The show premiered in autumn 2014, and each episode tried to piece together a timeline of what happened the night that Lee had disappeared, the night that she had taken her last breath. For the last year, I spent working every single day trying to figure out where a high school kid was for an hour after school one day in 1999. Miss Koenig would say this in the first episode. Only now, the kids she interviewed were adults, and some of their stories had changed. The previous stories were no longer valid, or were they? As each episode revealed new details and potential new suspects, internet sleuths and armchair detectives sprang into action and argued their theories on social media. Some were upset, some even threatened. They wanted their point heard. Some believed that he was guilty. Others argued that he was actually innocent. Others argued that he was spending the rest of his life in prison for a crime he had not committed. Others were angry at the criminal justice system, while others felt he got everything he deserved, and perhaps he should have gotten more. Within months, the chatter around Syed's case would ultimately help him win a new trial. But how many people are there left behind, where there aren't a Sarah Koenig to help push forward their agenda? How many men are in prison for crimes that they had not committed? How many people have went to the gallows of the death chamber for crimes they had not committed, yet they do not have the funds necessary for a lawyer, one that would actually fight for them? Eventually, the lawyers would argue new evidence had emerged showing that during the original trial, prosecutors had failed to investigate and rule out two potential suspects who were known to detectives at the time. Prosecutors were focused on one person. They didn't care about the potential suspects. Syed was their guy. They were going to get their conviction. And they did. Syed's lawyers also questioned the reliability of witness statements and mobile phone evidence originally used to convict him. A judge agreed and overturned Syed's conviction. But the prosecutors wouldn't have any of that. They would argue on appeal that the judge had made a mistake. And that conviction that was reversed would now be reversed by the appeals court. There would be no new trial, or would there? Eventually, the lawyers kept fighting. They kept pushing. And once again, the judge agreed and overturned the conviction. Would the prosecution fold and dismiss the case? Not yet. He was still charged with murder, kidnapping, and robbery in Lee's death while Baltimore State's Attorney, Marilyn Mosby's office, considered whether to try him again or to dismiss the case. They wanted more testing done. They still didn't believe the story. They wanted him to pay for the crimes, and as prosecutors often do, they chased a fantasy of conviction when it had no place in Adnan's life. He had already lost 23 years of his life. Some can say the best years that one has. The rest of his teens, all of his 20s, all of his 30s. High school prom, forever gone. High school graduation, gone. Children in his 20s, a career, forever lost. All years that can never be replaced. He was forced to live in a darkened cell for some of the most heinous crimes one can be charged with. Crimes that he knew, deep in his heart of hearts, that he had never committed. Anguish and pain and anger. You can only imagine. Eventually, at the request of prosecutors, several pieces of evidence were sent and marched to a California lab for touch DNA analysis, which seeks to test genetic matter left behind when someone comes into contact with something, and another type of test that aims to identify male profiles. Those analyses were not available around the time of Lee's death. Mosby's prosecutors conceded in court papers last month that the test hadn't yielded much, but they weren't done yet. They're hoping to analyze a few more pieces of evidence. They're hanging on to desperation. They didn't want to say that they made a mistake. They didn't want to admit that they sent a man to prison for 23 years of his life for a crime that he had not committed. Mosby said Tuesday that the items were pantyhose, a skirt, and shoes. Police found the clothing on Lee's body, which had been exposed to the elements, but investigators recovered the shoes from her car, according to court documents. Only the black dress shoes, which were dusted for prints in 1999, but not analyzed further, had DNA on them, Mosby said. She declined to say whether the DNA samples from the shoes had been entered into law enforcement DNA databases. One of the alternative suspects in Lee's death has a history of sexual abuse of men and is incarcerated in a federal facility after a string of assaults in the Washington, D.C. area, meaning his DNA profile is available for comparison. Those damn D.C. dudes, you might be thinking. But don't let one bad apple represent all of them. Whether he's guilty of Lee's death or not remains to be seen. Whether he's charged remains to be seen. But we do know that there's a history of sexual abuse of other men. Has he been abusing them in federal prison? Perhaps. When the DNA evidence came back, it was clear that Syed was not the killer, and now the prosecutors finally dropped the charges. His lawyer stated, finally, Adnan Syed is able to live as a free man. The DNA results confirm what we have already known, and what underlies all of the current proceedings, that Adnan is innocent and lost 23 years of his life, serving time for a crime he did not commit. While the family lost a daughter, and their pain is understandable, the attorney representing the family criticized the prosecutor's decision to drop the charges. Outrage should be in place. Why should an innocent man remain behind cold, concrete, and steel any longer for a crime he did not commit? Steve Kelly, who represents the family, said, by rushing to dismiss the criminal charges, the state attorney's office sought to silence Hae Min Lee's family and to prevent the family and the public from understanding why the state so abruptly changed its position of more than 20 years. All this family ever wanted was answers and a voice. Today's actions robbed them of both. Mosby apologized to the Lee family for their loved one's death, but dismissed the claim her office had neglected them, instead blaming Kelly. I think it's unfortunate that, you have certain attorneys that try to exploit families, Mosby said. Make no mistake, 2 lives lost, one buried alive. I hereby sentence you to life in prison plus 30 years. Mr. Syed, you're never getting out. Are you serious? Could you imagine what that kid felt like when the judge swung that gavel and said, this is it, man. Life as you know it is forever gone, forever lost. You'll never see the streets again. And I haven't read the judge's transcript or the sentencing transcript, but, usually when you're going to prison for the rest of your life for a crime like that, they push their little glasses down and they tell you what a nasty person you are and all the bad things you've done in your life. Look what you did to this family, you piece of... And you're just looking like, dude, this is absolutely outrageous. This isn't supposed to happen, right? But sometimes mistakes happen. But is it a mistake? Or were the prosecutors so focused on this one dude that they couldn't see anything on their peripheral vision? They had one focus. Bro, we're sending you to prison for the rest of your life. And, there's always a teachable moment in all my videos. I try to make it so there is a teachable moment. So what is the teachable moment today? What does this tell you? This tells you, man, that innocent people can go to prison, man, for the rest of their lives. It also tells you that there probably are many other men and women. I'm not going to say there's boatloads of them, but you better believe that there's other men and women that are sitting in prison right now. They've seen this story and they're like, damn, man. It gave them a little bit of hope because they know they're not guilty. They've been in prison 10, 15, 20, 30 years for a crime they didn't commit. And for the moment, they're like, damn, man, I know I could get out of here. And then they're like, damn, I don't have no lawyers sending emails to people that got podcasts trying to help me out. I'm from the hood, man. I'm from nowhere, man. I'm just a lost soul, man. I'm a lost soul sitting in prison for the rest of my life for some shit I know I didn't do. What does it feel like to be locked in a cell? Anguish, anger. This dude's probably going to get interviews from all over the place, right? 2020 and Dateline. Everybody's going to want to interview this kid now. Be nice if he can come on our show. We're going to reach out and see what happens. We'd love to have him come on and just really ask him in depth, like, what was it like knowing that, you were sentenced to life in prison, man, for a crime you didn't commit? Was there anguish? Was there anger? Was there hurt? Was there desperation? Were there times when you were like, damn, man, I know I didn't do this, but I'm never getting out? What kept you pushing? Was it the hope? Were you depleted by the time that these people got involved with the podcast, with Serial and all that? Were you just kind of like, man, I'm just done, man? And then they show up and you're like, wow, there's a breath of fresh air. I bet you it was like that. I bet you he got to the point where he's like, damn. And, I'm doing a case right now out of Las Vegas, and we're going to highlight this case, where this dude's innocent. He's been in prison for 25 years for a crime he didn't commit, for a murder that he didn't commit. I wholeheartedly believe that he did not commit this murder. and he's been in prison for 25 years. And the judge half-ass says, you know what, I believe you, but procedurally, I can't rule on this because there's stipulations when you try to get back into, into federal court, with this state case on 2254. So this man might spend the rest of his life in prison for a crime that he knows he didn't commit. He did not commit this crime, and I believe it. How many people are sitting in prison for something they didn't do? It could be you, man. You got to be careful with the decisions that you make, man. Be careful. And what I mean by that is, when the police come and they want to start questioning you, maybe you should say, I want a lawyer. I want a lawyer. Don't even tell them, man, I didn't do it. I want a lawyer. That's it. I need a lawyer here. And hopefully your family has the resources and the financial means to actually get you a lawyer that cares, man. A lawyer that's going to fight for you. A lawyer that's really going to protect your rights. A lawyer that's going to actually answer the phone when you call after you pay him. But it is what it is, man. I think this is a crazy story. It's all over the news. Man, I feel bad for this dude. He's going to pursue a law degree. He says Maryland has this law where he can get $2.2 million for his wrongful conviction and sitting in prison for 23 years. Think about that. Some people might be like, damn, man, $2.2 million. But really, would you trade $2.2 million for 23 years of your life? The best years of your life, 18, 19, 20. No high school prom, no college, no more girlfriends. None of that stuff, man. Yeah, you might get a girlfriend while you're in prison that comes to visit you, and you call her and you tell her you love her, and you guys write love letters and love notes, take pictures together, you eat a microwave cheeseburger and a microwave pizza. But man, that ain't life, man. That ain't how you want to live. I would never trade my life for $2.2 million, man. Now, I might go on 60 days in for, if they were going to pay me about 100, 150 grand for 60. Nah, probably not. I ain't leaving, man. I don't want to lose another day of my life. So 60 days in, it ain't for your boy. But anyway, man, Blood on the Razor Wire TV. I hope you like what we're doing right now. If you do, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share the video with respect. Until tomorrow, we're out.